Welcome to Ars Libri, an everyman's journey through Western literature, where we explore the literary arts book by book, reading, retelling, and reclaiming our rich heritage.
This episode, I am joined by Mrs. Bendlewery from Twitter fame, but we'll call her Rachel during this episode. We are going to be discussing Sense and Sensibility from Jane Austen. So to start out, Rachel, can you tell me why you are interested in Jane Austen and why this book in particular? I know you mentioned it was your favorite, which I found to be very interesting. I've never met anybody that this one is their favorite. So tell me why.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh. Okay. Yeah, why I love Jane Austen. I think she's just really great. I think she's just really a great author. And I know that's kind of it sounds like a silly thing to say, but she's just so brilliant.
Yeah.
She has a funny way. She's very witty, kind of dry. And I just appreciate her insight into like human nature. I'm hitting all the Jane Austen talking points, but I mean, people say that for a reason. That's just kind of
right.
What she's known for. And why I like Sense and Sensibility. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Nope, that's what I was going to ask. I was going to say why this one in particular. Yeah.
Why this one? I think it's a great story. First off, I think it was one of the first ones that she wrote. Okay. And it's one of the first ones that was published, if I'm not mistaken. So it's a little bit it's less refined than some of her later novels. Okay. I just think it's a great narrative. I think the characters that you meet in Sense and Sensibility kind of pop up in characters in some of her other works, some of the personalities. They're very pronounced in Sense and Sensibility, and then you kind of see glimpses of them in different characters in later works. So I don't know. I think it's a great story. I also read it. I think the first time I read it, I was in my early 20s. Okay. And I'm so sorry to say that I identified with Marianne, but I wanted to be an Eleanor. You know? Right. But I was like, I know Eleanor is the goal. I know that's kind of like what we want to be, but I just very much saw myself in Marianne. I played piano and, really into reading and like very artistic and like that kind of thing, big feelings. I also, sorry to say, I was a theater kid. So just very, so
the romantic side of things.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so I just really connected with her, even though I was like, oh, this is not good.
Yeah. See, it's funny. I identified with her in her love of nature and the outdoors. Like I texted you the other day, we were in Gatlinburg, and I wasn't quite kidding when I said I'm going to be going into raptures here over all the dead leaves. Yeah. I'm with Marianne on that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you're right. Eleanor is clearly the example in the book, the example of sensibility, of sense as opposed to sensibility. And that was a question I had for you is, could you, I guess, define what she means by sensibility? It's not really a word we use a whole lot. And if it is, I feel like it has a different definition than what she intended. So what do you think of that?
Oh, that's a great question. I think sense and sensibility. So I guess sensibility would be more the kind of like, I would think what she's getting at is feeling your feelings, basically.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Right, like just really, really feeling. So instead of having sense, like almost an autonomy over your feelings, it's the act of feeling them, right? And so I think when she's saying sense, we would think more feeling her like emotions, that kind of thing. Even though you're right, that's not a word that I don't think we would. Yeah, that's pretty.
Yeah, today I think when we hear that word, I think it's almost like a synonym to sense.
Yeah, exactly. Like you're being
more
sensible.
Than what Austen. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, before we get into too many of the differences of the characters, let's just go over the cast of characters.
All right.
Who are Eleanor and Marianne? Who are the Dashwoods? So can you introduce us to the Dashwood family?
Sure. The Dashwoods are the mother. Fun fact, I re-listened. I've read the book several times, but it's been a few years since I read it. And so I re-listened to it in preparation. And it describes the mom as like almost 40 and very old. And I am almost 40. And it was the first time that I had like listened to a Jane Austen and identified with like the mother. I had a moment, girl, I was like,
oh dear.
Anyway, so you have Mama Dashwood, who I have to say 38 is not old. But anyway.
I think they died a bit earlier.
They did.
So it's a little bit older in there. Yeah.
Man, what a feeling.
Yeah.
Speaking of feeling my feelings.
Right.
Anyway, so Mama Dashwood, you have Eleanor, the oldest. She's around 19. You have Marianne, who's little Margaret. She's like juvenile. She's 12 or 13.
Yeah.
And it's this family of women who has just lost their dad. And the dad asks, they have a son, or they have a stepbrother, or half brother, I guess.
Yeah, I think half. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a half. Yeah. He's entreated to take care of the family, but his awful wife convinces him to basically keep the inheritance that's supposed to go to the women. And so they're forced out of their house, Norland, and end up renting a cottage from the Middletons, who are just kind of a quirky little country family. So this is the story of mainly Eleanor and Marianne, their different love interests, and similar things happen in their love lives. But it's more about the differences between how they handle the conflict that happens, that arises.
Yeah, so. You're right. Their character makes a big difference and impact on their decisions. So tell me a little bit about Eleanor. What is her character? And then compare her to Marianne for me.
Yeah, I wrote down one of her descriptions in the book, like early in the book, is she had an excellent heart. Her disposition was affectionate and her feelings were strong, but she knew how to govern them. It was a knowledge which her mother had yet to learn and which one of her sisters, Marianne, had resolved never to be taught. And I thought that was a really good kind of summation of the two of them and how they're different. And so then you have Marianne, her sorrows, her joys could have no moderation. She was generous, amiable, interesting, everything but prudent. The resemblance between her and her mother was strikingly great. So you have Mom, you have Marianne, and they both they feel big feelings, right? They're very high, but can be very low. And then you have Eleanor, who's very much like the voice of reason in the family, who even like, yeah.
So what do you make of that? As I feel like that's a theme that's common in Austen, where you have a child who almost is in the position of instructing a parent, or at least providing guidance for a parent. What do you make of that?
I just wonder if Jane Austen's mama wasn't a little difficult.
I think I heard that. Was she like
I don't know,
hypochondriac or something?
Was
like
she?
Like she always had these illnesses, and there's always something wrong with her.
Yeah. Just very high frequency, like high anxiety.
Yeah.
And you see that the mom in Pride and Prejudice is like this. The aunt in Mansfield Park is like this. Fanny Price, that like all sorts of Persuasion, like a lot of the characters, the women in Persuasion are also like they're very much the contentious woman. When I was listening to this, two verses kind of kept going through my head as I was thinking about this story. And the first is the proverb, and I didn't write it down. I should have, but it's the one like he who has no self-control is like a city broken down without walls. And I think that's like a very that's a good verse to like think about as you're reading this book, because it's really about like the difference between self-control and then just absolute lack of self-control. But I also kept thinking of like, you know, the man on the rooftop to get away from his wife. Like,
Yes.
like the wise woman builds her house, but the foolish one tears it down. And a lot of the women, just because they have no control over their spirit, or in some cases they may be very gossipy, maybe very catty, just whatever it is, like their husbands hate them. They're no fun to be around, and they cause all sorts of problems. And so they're very much like the contentious woman, I think.
Yeah. With Mrs. With Mrs. Dashwood, though, I feel like Jane Austen is gentler with her because she's not so bad as some of the other women that we encounter in Austen's works. Right. But it is a critique, though. She is still critiquing because she says that Marianne and Mrs. Dashwood were very similar. And I just thought, what a burden that is on the children to have a mother who has still not yet reined in her emotions. She still doesn't have them under control. She's still led by them. And I was just thinking, this is a lesson for us as mothers, like not to be this way for our children. Like the burden on Eleanor was so heavy, all because the mother hadn't learned to control herself yet. And I just would hate to do that for my children, you know? We're supposed to do the opposite, the exact opposite.
Right. Right. Yeah. You should be the anchor. And I think like we can give her a little bit of leeway too, because she is going through like some pretty harsh grief.
Yeah.
You know, so she is in the middle of grief. So it's understandable, but you're right that she should be the adult in the room, and just isn't. You know, Eleanor is, even though Eleanor, even throughout the book, like really, I think Austen makes a point to let you know that Eleanor does have feelings. Like she does.
Right.
She's not stoic in the sense of like, she's not a robot and she's not emotionless.
Right.
She very much feels things. She just has a good control over how she expresses them. And she's just very prudent in a way that I think her mom and Mary Ann aren't. Yeah,
there's like the mother and Mary Ann, they are looking for the emotion. There's a line here that Austen says, the agony of grief, which is, I mean, this is real grief. They were going through some hard times. She says, the agony of grief, which overpowered them at first, was voluntarily renewed. It was sought for, was created again and again. That is a real temptation for women. It's like that's what brings excitement. It's a major temptation for women, this desire to relive these moments of great emotion, whether positive or negative. Either way, it's the emotion that's like they're feeding off of it. And I think that women are much more prone to do that sort of thing. And I think that's exactly what Eleanor tried so hard to keep in check. Like she was really good at that. But the other two, it was wanton. They just gave themselves to it as much as they could, you know.
Well, and even like, so when Marianne, spoiler alert, and also, y'all, it was written in like early 1800s. So if you have not read it, also there are many great movie adaptations too that are fun watches. So I don't know, I can't help you. I was going to give a spoiler alert, and it is that Willoughby is Marianne's main love interest. She falls in love with this guy named Willoughby, who's like the worst. He's the worst. He's like the emo dude in a band, right? Oh, no. Like he's the guy, you know, like.
That's funny.
Don't, you know what I mean?
Irresistible.
Speaking of in your fields, that Willoughby is very much in his field. But anyway, he breaks Marianne's heart, and after he breaks her heart, there's a point where it talks about she re-listens to all the music that they listened to together, and the books that they discussed, and. You know, and which is, I think, and it goes back to why do we love Jane Austen? Like, she's so timeless. Like, that's how girls act after a breakup. That's what you do, right? You re-listen to all the songs. You scratch that itch. Like, you pick that scab. And it makes the feelings come up and just, you just feel them. And that is a way that you're not controlling your spirit. Like, you have no control over your spirit.
Right.
Because there's a line. There's no boundary.
Sorry, finish.
No, go ahead.
There's a line
done.
in Pride and Prejudice where someone, I think Lizzie is saying about Lydia, that she's gotten over the most trying age. And I think she was referring to 15. And I think exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Like, that is what makes that age so trying.
Yes. Oh, man. And it really, like, you just look at it, you feel like it's the end of the world. And
Right.
yeah. So so to your point that being able to control that impulse of like not reliving events, good or bad, over and over again as a way to kind of guard against that loss of control. I think that's a great example of like what not to do.
Exactly.
What
Exactly.
we don't do.
Okay, so before we get too ahead of ourselves, let's get back on the plot. So we left off at pretty much the beginning.
Who are the
Dashwoods? Yeah, the Dashwood grandfather and then father both die, leaving the children, the mother and the daughters, almost destitute. Not quite. They have enough for a little cottage, which for them is a major step down.
Yeah,
what's that?
But I mean, their cottage is like dream house, like
Right.
Anyway, it's just funny what they think a cottage is. But
Yes. So they are helped out by their relation, Sir John Middleton. It's his cottage, and he tends to be extremely hospitable to the extreme. So tell me a little bit about the Middletons, about their characters, their daughters, and how they play into the story.
yeah, the Middletons. So like you said, I can't remember what their exact relation is.
I think just like a cousin.
Like a cousin or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. But yeah, I think they're cousins. And so they own the cottage. And then his mother-in-law is kind of, that's Mrs. Jennings, right? Yeah.
Right.
Mrs. Jennings is like the neighborhood gossip and busybody. And speaking of like women you don't want to be like anyway. And she's always trying to like set people up and like get into other people's business and like she is a character. But her daughter and husband, they're like minor characters in the plot, but they introduce the Dashwoods to the Miss Steeles, which I can't remember. Are they a cousin as well?
I think they're related to Mrs.
Jennings. Okay. Yeah. I think so too. Anyway, so the Middletons, they're side characters. They move things along because they basically know everyone in the neighborhood. They're always having parties. They're always inviting the Dashwoods over. Like at one point, I think when they first moved in, they dined like every day.
Yeah.
With the Middletons, which bless their hearts, that talk about emotional fortitude. Because they're just, so the Middleton, John and his wife are described as, I thought this was funny, so I wrote it down. They're described as not being very interesting people. He a sportsman and she a mother, which I thought was really interesting. I was like, Jane, because Jane Austen never had children. And I just was like, that's funny. She's describing this woman as she basically had no personality. Her whole personality was her children. So if you were in a room with her, the subject of conversation was always going to be like what the baby did today, or how the kids are growing, or that kind of thing. So that's the Middletons.
Yeah, I thought that was funny too when talking about Lady Middleton. I do feel like Jane Austen was kind of poking at moms there because she mentioned something about how there was never lack of conversation as long as the topic of children was there. And I was like, you know what, Jane? I don't know if you've ever been in a really awkward situation, but children can often come to the rescue. So let's not poke too hard at that. Oh, goodness.
For sure.
Yeah. So one thing, another friend of theirs, Colonel Brandon, is a friend of the Middletons and the Jennings. So tell me about him. Who is he? Tell me how old he is.
He's so old. He's 35.
So yes.
Jade.
Ancient. I mean, is he even capable of love? I don't know.
No, and that Marion, the 17-year-old, he is old and decrepit. Like he's almost dying. He's basically
flannel waistcoat.
Why is this guy? Yeah, flannel waistcoats because of his rheumatism or something. I don't know. Oh man, so funny. Yeah. again, I think Austen wrote this. I think she was like a teenager when she started this. She was older when she published it, but like I think this, I can't remember the name of it, but like how Pride and Prejudice was first impressions, this one was another, like something before it was Sensibility. Yeah.
Okay.
But anyway, so it may have just been like Austen was really young and that's what she thought. Because you kind of think that like when you're a teenager, you really do think like 35. Wow, that's really... Anyway, so Colonel Brandon, old and decrepit Colonel Brandon, ends up being the true love interest of Marianne. So he is a soldier and a really upstanding guy, just really strong character, just a very good man. And he notices in Marianne, he had his first love, this woman that he fell in love with, who ended up marrying his brother. It's a very dramatic story. He was in love with this woman and she ended up dying. And he never loved basically another woman until he met Marianne, and she reminded him of his first love. And so that's kind of where his interest came in. But he's very quiet. He's just very stable and solid. And so by the end, Marianne has learned her lesson and falls in love with him and ends up marrying Colonel Brandon, but which is great because she really needed someone to like kind of rein her in. And I bet he was a good husband, a good match for her. But anyway.
I have thoughts about that. I feel like, honestly, out of all the matchings that Jane Austen does, that one was a hard one for me to chew.
Really?
Colonel Brandon and Mary. Yes. That was a hard one.
Why?
Well, so many people throughout the book try to pair up Colonel Brandon and Eleanor. They see his attentions and they naturally suit one another. They understand each other. They understand other people. They agree on so many things. And Marianne is just kind of totally separate from him for most of the book. She's very much involved with her love for Willoughby and everything. And Eleanor is there for him. She's his confidant. She's all of these things. And I keep thinking like, they would be so great together. And, well, and I guess we're kind of skipping to the end, but I'm trying to find where
I know that was my fault. I'm not a good. I love to read, but I'm not a writer, or I'm neither a writer nor a storyteller. So I kind of jumped the gun there, but
no, it's okay.
Okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah, I definitely see what you're saying because there are a lot of similarities, Colonel Brandon and Eleanor and their character. But I think he's such a great match for Marianne because he is so stable and consistent. He's a constant, right? And he also, like, he is not swayed by the changes in her emotions. You know, he's not,
right?
Because he's very steady. And while I think he and Eleanor they probably could have been a good match. So, and also Edward, which is Eleanor's love interest, the man that she falls in love with, I think is similar to Colonel Brandon. Like he's kind of described in a very similar way. They're both kind of quiet, although Edward is a little bit moodier, it seems.
And maybe a tad more awkward, yeah.
And a little more awkward. Yeah, he's a little, he is a little awkward, but that's okay.
Yeah, I will say, I thought that Hugh Grant was perfect as Edward Ferrars. And I really I can't stand the guy, honestly. I do not like him as an actor, but he nailed Edward.
He did. He did. Yeah.
So go ahead and tell me about the Ferrars. So we already mentioned Edward. He's Eleanor's love interest, but tell me about the whole Ferrars family. So there's Fanny, there's the mother, there's all of them. So tell me about them.
I mean, the mother doesn't play too huge of an onstage presence, but she very much. So you have the mother, you have Robert, Edward's brother, you have Edward, and then you have Fanny, the sister. Fanny is married to the Dashwoods' half brother, and she is the worst. She is the worst. She is who you do not want to be. She convinces her husband to forego the Dashwoods' inheritance. She's very catty. She's almost mean. She's just mean. Lady. Just very selfish.
Yes.
Looks out. They have one son, a young son, and she just is very one-track minded and just wants what she wants. She wants to control everybody around her, so she doesn't want she wants to tell Edward, like, she notices Edward and Eleanor's burgeoning kind of romance, and she can tell that he's interested in her. And she does not want that because Eleanor and her family, because of Fanny, are poor.
Right.
And so she's like, not good enough, you know? So she kind of like tries to kind of get in there and break that up, you know, just very nasty woman,
Yes.
as our president would say. Nasty.
That's great. Oh, so what about the mother? Is she any more delightful, or is she just as awful?
No, that apple did not fall far from the tree. No, there's a scene where they have a dinner party. So in the book, really quickly, in the book, at one point, Eleanor and Marianne are invited to go to London. At this point, Willoughby has he's not quite broken Marianne's heart, but he's left in a hurry and she doesn't know why. So she's very distraught and like constantly looking out for him. Eleanor has found out that Miss Lucy Steele, who is the cousin of the Middleton, Lucy Steele is secretly engaged to Edward. At one point earlier on in the story, it seems as though Edward's about to propose to Eleanor. And my one thing is, why didn't he just tell her that this was happening? I don't know. He, long ago, in like a youthful, I mean, indiscretion, but just imprudence, the folly of youth, he had gotten engaged, secretly engaged. Lucy's described as not refined. There's also one point, speaking of Austen and her like really understanding people, there's a point where after Eleanor finds out that Lucy's actually engaged to Edward, which breaks Eleanor's heart, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Horrible. But there's a part where she's like, yeah, but she's not even that good. Like, she's describing Lucy kind of in her own internal monologue as like, but she's not even refined. She's not very well educated. She's kind of not crass like we would think crass, but like not good manners.
Yeah, just low class. Yeah,
just low
I
class,
admire Eleanor. I admire Eleanor for that because she, instead of being jealous of Lucy, it's like Lucy is so far beneath her that she's not even jealous or envious.
She's not even jealous.
Because she's like,
I don't get it.
Poor Edward.
Because that's what girls do, right? Like, so you go through a breakup and then, you know, the guy starts dating someone else and you're like, I mean, she's not even cute. Like, you know, like that's such a human, like, don't have that attitude. That's not a good attitude, but it's very true. It's very real, you know? And Austen just knows that. And it's also why I think, like, along with Shakespeare, much like Shakespeare, like, who is like a study in human nature, I think it's why their stories can be retold in modern, like, movies and things, adaptations, and be just as good a story. Because it really is like timeless. So.
Right.
But anyway, yeah, so Lucy, Edward, I know, back on track.
Yeah,
there we go.
That's fine. Back to the plot. Okay, so we left with the Dashwoods in Barton Cottage. So tell me about Marianne meeting Willoughby. Tell me about Willoughby's entrance into the story.
Oh, my word.
I know.
It's so dramatic. So Marianne, is she hiding from Colonel Brandon? Colonel Brandon comes to visit her at the cottage, and she's like, I'm not into this guy, and I kind of want to not be here. So she takes her little sister Margaret, and they start walking the moors. Very Wuthering Heights moment, very Gothic moment, which is funny because Jane Austen wrote Northanger Abbey, which is a parody on Gothic novels that were really popular in her time. And this is like such a scene out of that. You almost feel like she's poking fun.
Oh yeah, very intentional.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So it starts thunderstorming. Marianne falls and breaks her ankle or sprains her ankle really bad. And who comes along? White Knight to the rescue, but Willoughby on horseback. You know, my lady, like, scoops her up in his arms and carries her all the way back to the cottage very dramatically. It's Marianne's described as like speechless because this like good looking young man on horseback has come and like rescued her and her little sprained ankle, takes her back to the cottage, and then he leaves promising to come back the next day. So that's their meet cute. It's very dramatic, and it very much sets the stage for their relationship, which is just increasingly like without discretion.
Yes.
To the extent that it gets to a point where they're like unchaperoned touring his house. So Willoughby he's in the country like once a year, and he stays at his aunt's house, who he is to inherit from. Marianne and Willoughby just have a very dramatic love story. They love all the same books. They love all the same music. There's a very famous, probably one of the most famous lines from Sense and Sensibility is, when Marianne says 7 years would be insufficient to make some people acquainted with each other, and 7 days for others. Her point being, yeah, we just met, but I know him and I love him, which is so dumb because she does not know him. He has a very sordid past. He's like, so he had an affair with Colonel Brandon's, the daughter of the woman that he loved. She had a daughter before she died. That daughter, when she was about 15 or so, had an affair with Willoughby, and he got her pregnant. And then Willoughby just like ghosted her, basically, like total not good guy. And basically like kind of tries to woo Marianne. And it says that there's a moment later in the book where Willoughby is explaining himself to Eleanor.
Yes, I was just thinking of that.
And he tells her, like, at first I was just having fun. Like, I just thought, oh, this could just be a like fun little thing while I'm here in the country. But he actually ended up falling in love with her. And I think that's right. Because like, he really does seem to actually genuinely care for her. But because they're poor and because he needs to inherit his aunt's money, the aunt finds out about the love child, it disinherits him. And so he says he's like forced to marry this random like rich high society lady for 50,000 pounds a year or something like that. Who
he had reason to believe would marry him. So he was already covering his tail in that way. Like he had her primed and ready. So that was some dishonesty there.
Man, he's very dishonest, very shady, super shady dude. Like, just look,
at
ladies,
the end.
ladies, don't fall for a Willoughby. Don't do it. Run, girl.
Right. It's so true. Yeah, at the end when he's trying to justify himself to Eleanor, there's a part where he says, when he first met Marianne, he was intentionally basically telling her everything that she wanted to hear. At the beginning, Marianne says, I could not be happy with a man whose taste did not in every point coincide with my own. He must enter into all my feelings. And she says, the more I know of the world, the more am I convinced that I shall never see a man whom I can really love. I require so much. Which to me,
girl, you do.
She does. It's amazingly arrogant, but he realizes that about her, like right on, like at the very start, and he does exactly that. She's like, "This is my favorite poem," and he says, "Wow, that's mine too," and all of the favorite songs and musics, and he admits as much to Eleanor at the end. He's like, "Yeah, I wanted her to love me, and that's how I did it. I made sure that we agreed on everything, that we were like one in all of our interests, and it totally worked on Marianne." And so that's a major lesson for us. Like, there are guys who know how to do this.
Player's gonna play or whatever.
Exactly.
No, for sure.
Okay, let's go with Willoughby's exit from the story, and then Edward shows up at Barton Cottage. So tell me about how Willoughby leaves and how Edward visits.
Yeah, so Willoughby, at one point you're like, he is definitely going to propose to me. He is like, you are primed for it. Eleanor and her mom and Margaret leave the cottage so they can have some privacy while he's clearly going to. Eleanor and her mother come back, and Marianne is crying, like sobbing, weeping tears. Willoughby just looks very like deer in headlights and just leaves very abruptly. So he has to go back to the city because he's had this conversation with the aunt. The aunt has found out that he has a love child and has disinherited him. And so because he's not going to get the aunt's money, and so that he can marry Marianne and still be rich, he basically ghosts her as we would like the common parlance. He ghosts her, and then ends up, we find out he's engaged very quickly and then married very quickly to this like rich heiress.
Mm-hmm.
Do we know? I don't think we've met Lucy yet when he visits the cottage. No.
She comes in right after this. So you can go ahead and talk about that too, how they have this weird meeting with Edward and they can't read him. They don't understand. Yeah. And then the Steeles come and Lucy confides in Eleanor and she's like, oh.
Yeah, that's basically it. Yeah, so Edward is... Edward comes to visit the cottage and visit the girls and visit mainly Eleanor. And I think he wants to tell her what's going on. Like he's actually engaged to this other girl and that's why he hasn't. And because he is actually a man of honor and he does have character, he's not going to just drop the fiance. He's not going to ghost the fiance to get with Eleanor, right? He's going to, he's going to basically keep his word.
Right.
But they don't know that. They don't know he's engaged. They don't know any of this is happening. He comes to visit them and he's very moody and broody and you're kind of like, they're like, what's his deal? He seems very unhappy. And I think he only stays a day and then leaves. And then very shortly after that, they're visiting the Middletons and they meet Lucy and her sister, I think Anne is her name.
Mm-hmm.
So they meet Lucy and Anne Steele, and these are the sisters. And so this is Lucy who is secretly engaged to Edward. And she's never met Eleanor before in her life, but for some reason, like shortly after meeting, decides that she's going to tell Eleanor this huge secret that she's been keeping inside for years. And the only person that knows is Anne. She tells Eleanor that she is secretly engaged to Edward. And I think because Lucy knows that Eleanor knows Edward. So she's like, oh, here's a friend and I can finally talk about him to somebody.
Okay, you're a lot nicer to Lucy than I am then, because I'm thinking from the very beginning it was very premeditated. Like she knew of Eleanor by reputation, I think a good deal more, and she was worried. She knew from Fanny, or Fanny knew, others knew that Edward preferred Eleanor, and I think she was staking a claim. Because that would really be the only reason for her to reveal this engagement that she has kept so secret for so long. She's saying
that's a good point. Oh, I don't know. Women would never do that. Are you kidding?
Oh
no, we absolutely would. Like that absolutely would happen. It's very like middle school, just the drama in this book. And that's why like I really genuinely enjoy the story of the book, because it is like it's almost a comedy of errors, except that it's not exactly funny, but sometimes it kind of is, because you're just like, I know you people and I've been in this situation, and all the temptations like common to women. and men,
I really love the scenes of Lucy when she is confiding in Eleanor. To me, those are some of my favorite, because Lucy is so low class in the way that she goes about these things. And so Eleanor is sitting there and she refuses to let Lucy feel victory. So Lucy is like stabbing Eleanor repeatedly by dangling this in front of her face, this bit of news that Edward is mine. And Eleanor maintains control of herself. And so Lucy doesn't taste the sweet victory that she would have. Like, had it been Marianne in the position of Eleanor, Marianne would have burst into tears and caused a scene.
There would have been a scene. Yeah,
it would have been a big deal. But Eleanor has so much control of herself that Lucy's not even sure if she has wounded her.
Right.
And her heart's just breaking, Yeah. But it's no reward for Lucy. And I love that. I love that Eleanor had that control of herself to really protect herself. I think that was a beautiful picture of why this self-control is so important.
Yeah, it really, like, because a city without walls is defenseless. That's the whole thing. And easily like taken over, manipulated. And in that moment, she would have very easily been by Lucy. But you're right, because she kept control of her spirit, she was able to really have the and be able to kind of like not be led away. Yeah, if it was Marianne, Which, okay, later in the book, it is Marianne. So this is an interesting, and I love how Austen does this. These stories kind of mirror each other, because Marianne eventually, they go to London. Shortly after this, after meeting the Seals, they go to London. Marianne, so Willoughby has left. Marianne is like pining for him, doesn't know why he hasn't shown up, hasn't answered her letters or anything like that. They go to a party and she sees him with his fiance and realizes that's his fiance, and she like nearly faints. I mean, she just loses her mind, you know, and then just goes home and writes the most dramatic letter and sends it to him immediately. How could you? How could you? You know, anyway, She does what Eleanor, like the exact opposites, but they have very similar things happen. They find out that, you know, the men that they're in love with, that they want to be with, are with other people, other women. Mm-hmm. You know, and that's devastating. And and you know, one of them keeps control, and then the other loses her mind. So
Another thing that I like about how Austen writes Lucy, you know, Austen, I believe it was her who said syntax is character. So she always conveys character, the character of her characters, by how they speak. And Lucy in particular, part of how she communicates being low bred is she uses improper grammar sometimes, or she'll speak double in different ways. But even with the tones and like facial expressions that Austen uses, she really communicates the idea that Lucy is low bred. But to just see them next to each other, like if you were to see Lucy and to see Eleanor standing next to each other, you probably wouldn't be able to tell that there was such a difference. Yet Austen is able to convey that to us. And I really appreciate that and her ability to write that into the story and to show that one is virtuous and one is very much the opposite, you know, with such small hints. Mm-hmm. It's masterful.
Yeah. I know, it really is. And again, like, this is like kind of one of her more, I mean, it's an earlier work, so it's not as, she gets more refined in exactly that, like, as you get some of her later works are so subtle. Like, it's those subtle little things that you pick up on that really bring the characters to life and the story to life in that way.
All right, back to the plot. After Willoughby has his whirlwind romance with Marianne and then leaves her, Mrs. Jennings invites the Dashwood ladies to come with her to London. So tell me about their time in London. How does that go?
Yeah. How about being cooped up in a house with that lady?
Yeah.
She's very, if you've never read it, she's very much like the picture of being a busybody and just gossipy and just constantly kind of almost like picking, like a hen, like picking and pecking, you know, that's just constantly like, oh, Marianne, why are you sad? Da, 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 da. Like, it's just like, lady, back off. And there's even a point where Marianne is sad after the party. Mrs. Jennings, like, will not leave her alone about seeing Willoughby and that the scene and everything happening. And Marianne, why are you upset? And Eleanor almost loses it on Mrs. Jennings because she's so annoyed. Like, well, I don't know, lady, hush, you know? Like, basically, anyway.
You know it's bad if you can make Eleanor lose her cool. You know it's bad.
Yeah. Yes. So, yeah, definitely props to Eleanor because she didn't. Yeah, that would have been hard to. To deal with in a gracious manner, and she dealt with it in a gracious manner, but also stopped the conversation in its tracks. So good on her. Yeah. So that's Mrs. Jennings. She really is like trying to be almost the neighborhood matchmaker. She's really up into everybody's business about that. And so she's constantly trying to set young people up and figure out who they're interested in. And can we go to this party and have this social gathering and make ourselves known kind of about town? So, and then at one point they end up, I can't remember at whose invitation. Lucy's, maybe? No.
The party?
Lucy's there. Yeah. No, not the party at Edward's mom's, Mrs. Farrar's house.
Okay.
I can't remember how they...
I believe that was because they ran into their brother.
That's right.
I think.
At Robert
and
the
so
party.
they get
Yeah.
They get invited.
Yeah,
by
okay.
both brothers, their own brother, but also Robert, and they just kind of get swept in. And also, I think it was an excuse to slight them. They wanted to slight them at this party. So tell me about the dinner party.
Yeah, so they go to this dinner party at Mrs. Farrar's house. And if your thesis about Lucy is correct, then basically what Lucy wants to do is rub in Eleanor's face that this is about to be her mother-in-law.
Yeah.
They end up at this very awkward dinner party. It's Robert. Edward isn't there. Edward wisely stays away, makes an excuse. He's out of town. He's not there, but Robert's there. Fanny's there, the Steeles, the Dashwood ladies, Mrs. Jennings. And basically, Mrs. Ferrars is very nasty to them during the dinner because they're poor. They wanted to slight them.
Right.
And so they have to sit through this dinner. They know that Marianne's heartbroken because I think at that point Willoughby's engagement had been announced. And so she's having a really rough time and they're kind of rubbing it in her face a little. Lucy's really brown nosing with the mom, really trying to get on her good side, very flattery, a lot of flattery. And basically Eleanor just has to sit there and watch it and just be like,
I don't know what's worse, is Lucy's flattering or the fact that it works. It's both so awful. Eleanor's sitting there seeing all of this awful flattery going on. And then she looks at the mother-in-law and it's and it's working. They like her. It's awful.
But the good news is that Eleanor kind of gets last laugh because when Lucy and Edward's engagement is announced, I think accidentally by Lucy's sister, accidentally tells Fanny, who freaks out, which is very funny. It's kind of Fanny's comeuppance because she really wanted her brother to marry someone high class and high society, lots of money, and here he is engaged to Lucy Steele, who is not those things. And so she just loses her mind. Also, another woman who loses her mind in this story.
Yes, hysterics.
But hysterics and the vapors. But the mom finds out, Mrs. Ferrars finds out, and threatens to disinherit Edward if he marries Lucy. Which, being the good man that he is, he's like, well, then disinherit me, But the inheritance ends up going to his brother Robert, and so does Lucy, because Lucy, turns out, is not a good character. She does not have good character. She does not have good. She ends up she kind of is going wherever the money goes, and that's where the money goes. So she ends up marrying Robert, and Edward is now free to marry Eleanor. But but at the dinner party, you don't know this, but that's how Eleanor kind of does get the last. They get their happy ending, so that's kind of her. They get to hear it, the quiet life in the country.
Right. Well, before they get to the quiet life in the country, they have a little bit more to go through. So after the dinner, Edward calls on Eleanor, and he doesn't know that Lucy has also called on Eleanor. So tell me about that.
Oh, that's right.
Favorite scenes. You've got a secret engaged couple, and he doesn't know that she knows, but she does. He doesn't know Eleanor and they're all mixed up, right. And all three of them are sitting there with a very large elephant in the room.
Yes, and it's hilarious because I think when he first walks in, he doesn't see Lucy, so he doesn't know Lucy is even in the room. He goes in to talk to Eleanor, and it's very clear, in an intimate way, right up to her, and I think he's about to profess his love for her and tell her what's going on. But he looks over, and Eleanor again with the social graces, very gracefully points out that Lucy is in the room. I believe you know Miss Steele. Please don't say whatever. It seems like, dude, stop right now. Please do not say whatever.
As much as she would have wanted to hear that, but she had that control.
She did. And so he looks over and there's Lucy. And so he just, especially because he is not Mr., suave, bless his heart. He is awkward. He's super awkward. And so the whole thing is just really awkward. And so he ends up making an excuse and leaves. And then Lucy is like, oh, I have to go that way too. Why don't I walk out with you? Anyway, and so they end up walking out together, and poor Eleanor is just left there what in the world is happening? poor thing.
Yeah, I like how Marianne kind of comes to the rescue. And is it that scene? I think it's that scene. She comes in and she sees Edward and she's like, Edward, hey, it's so good to see you. Yeah. And he is so confused, the poor man, because he feels like if he expresses any delight at seeing them, that would betray him to Lucy.
Right.
But if he doesn't express delight, then Marianne is going to be like, why don't you like us anymore?
Yeah.
And for Edward, it's like he doesn't know himself. You know, he's a reserved man. But then Marianne accuses him of being reserved, and he's all shocked. He's like, what, me, reserved? She's like, It's funny, though, how he doesn't know himself. But I think that it's his relationship with Eleanor that teaches him to know himself. And I think that's part of why he values her so much, is that he sees the difference in the women, for sure. But I think he also finally has the courage to be the man that he wants to be, that he's been trying to be, that he couldn't be around his mother or his sister or even Lucy. And that it's really only in Eleanor, because she has the integrity to do what's right. And he sees that and he admires her for that. And it gives him the strength to also act with integrity.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think, too, because she's obviously very socially adept. I mean, she has a master class in like social graces with the mom that she has and the sister that she has. So she's probably constantly smoothing over slights and, things like that. And so knowing that Edward is pretty awkward, I think that's why they're a good match, because she just helps kind of smooth some of his social awkwardness. Like a good wife is a helper to her husband. And like, that's kind of an example of that. Like she, just kind of counterbalances some of his.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. I feel like had he married a woman with less integrity than Eleanor, it would have been an awful situation for him. Like the wife would have been authoritarian or a nag, or she would have bossed him around, but Eleanor has the character and the virtue to see what he needs and to see herself as a helper and do that for him. But I think he, easily could have been controlled by a very bossy wife. That would have been his undoing. Yeah.
Yeah. Longhouse, as we like to say.
True. Right? Yes.
And especially because he's about to be a pastor. So, he needs a woman like that, and not, certainly not Lucy Steele. She would not have been a good pastor's wife.
Yeah, no, it says that. It's like Austen does this little sketch of what their life would have been like had he married Lucy. And she mentions how she would have always been trying to be best friends with all of the richest people she knew and trying to get as much as she could from Colonel Brandon, because he would have been like their patron. And just like this weaselly, what's the word? Mooch? where you're just mooching on them. And you see her behavior, though, her and her sister, throughout the whole book, they're moochers. Like they go from house to house, staying with rich relatives, accepting every invitation that they can. Yeah. That's how they live. That's their mode of life.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's how they kind of survive. And that's why Lucy easily, when she saw the money wasn't coming Edward's way, it's going Robert's.
Right.
She marries Robert instead. I don't think I've ever like put words to that. So that was beautifully put.
Mooch, yes, beautiful. Such a funny word. Okay, so after all of this happens, the secret engagement has now been made public, and Edward and Lucy are trying to get married, but he needs a living. And Colonel Brandon hears of this. So what does he do about this?
Colonel Brandon offers him the curate in his town, which he is the patron of. Colonel Brandon is very rich. I don't know if we said that, but just FYI, he's very rich. Mm-hmm. And so he's the patron of the parson, like he owns the parsonage. And so he offers that to Edward. And so that's how Edward accepts, and that's how he's going to make his living.
It's so awful, though, because Colonel Brandon goes specifically to Eleanor and he says, hey, will you tell
tell
Edward that I want to do this for him so that he can marry someone else. And I just feel so that, again, Eleanor has to have all of this self-control. She herself has to be the means of her own unhappiness in somehow making Edward's life easier at the same time.
Right.
It's like she's...
And probably knowing she'll see him every day in that case, too.
Oh, I know.
Right? You know, because they live at, you know, she's like, well, we can't get married, so I'm going to live with my mother at Barton Cottage. And that would have been their church, right? So she would have had to see Edward and Lucy every day.
Oh,
but you're right. Hard. She swallows it. Man, she swallows her pride and she swallows all her feelings and goes and offers the curate to him.
Mm-hmm.
And he, of course, accepts. And at that point, he was still planning on marrying Lucy because he is a man of integrity. And so he didn't want to, he gave Lucy his word. So he was like, I have to follow through, even though he clearly loved Philip.
Right. Yeah. So by this time, Eleanor and Marianne are thoroughly sick of London, very much ready to go home. Yep. But it's a hard journey, especially for two young women. They can't really figure out how to do this. When the Palmers, I don't think we've introduced them yet, but Mrs. Jennings has two daughters, the Middleton and then the Charlotte Palmer. They offer to let the girls come to their house at Cleveland, which is nearer to their own home. And so they go there and they're like, well, if we just stay a couple weeks, we'll be home that much sooner. It's an easier distance. So tell me about their time at Cleveland with the Palmers.
They go to Cleveland. They stay with the Palmers. Marianne is still incredibly depressed because Willoughby has married someone else. They're just ready to get home. Eleanor's heartbroken because Edward's marrying Lucy. Like, they're just heartbroken in a hard state. Colonel Brandon's there. I think he actually escorts them and offers, I think was it his idea? I can't remember. Anyway, but he's there too. Marianne foolishly one night in her depression decides to take, again, a very dramatic walk on the moors where it starts thunderstorming, and which is kind of a nice bookend. Now that I'm saying it out loud, it is a nice bookend to the end of her story. I guess it's Austen's way of saying this is the end of the story with Willoughby. She is wandering in the moors, gets caught in a really bad thunderstorm, and doesn't show back up to the house. And so Colonel Brandon goes to look for her and finds her basically passed out. She's contracted some sort of terrible fever. So we just in Proverbs in our family worship just read, I don't remember if it was this morning or it was recent, the last couple of days. If you listen to wisdom, it's life to your flesh and health to your bones, I think is. Mm-hmm. This is an example of the opposite of that verse. So good
application.
Yeah. So she is so uncontrolled and so in her feelings and so just carried about by every wind and wave, literally. She gets sick and almost dies, because she did not exercise wisdom the way that Eleanor did. She basically gets sick and she gets on the point of death, to the extent that at one point Eleanor is like, she's not going to make it. Colonel Brandon, can you please go get our mom? And he's like, can you send someone? And he's like, I will go myself. And goes and gets, which thankfully Marianne pulls through. But Marianne does realize in her sickness, she realizes how foolish she's been, which thank the Lord, because
yes.
What more sign do you need, girl? You're dying of, I don't know, malaria or something. Your immune system is so broken because you are so in your feels. You've contracted some sort of terrible scarlet fever or something.
I like how several times in the book it mentions that they're so upset with grief that she would have Austen always puts it really well, but it's she would have the pleasure of a sleepless night or something like that, enjoy the fact that she didn't be able to eat anything for 3 days because of this overpowering grief. And it's to eat something or to sleep would be to do it injustice to my grief, you know?
Right. I have to honor my grief.
Exactly.
Yeah, she really is the embodiment of why you don't follow your heart.
Yes.
that is the heart is deceptive. That is this girl. Which is why it's a great story, especially if you have daughters, they're getting a little older. This is a great story to go through with them, and talk about these things and talk about these characters and like why Eleanor was wise and Marianne was not wise, and what it led to. But anyway, Marianne does start to kind of realize her own folly. She does some repenting, which is great.
Yes.
And even when she finds out, because eventually she finds out that Lucy Steele is secretly engaged to Edward. And she tells Marianne, like, I can't believe you knew that for this long. How did you handle it? Do you not feel anything? And Eleanor is like, I felt everything. It's just that I had to honor the fact that I told Lucy I wouldn't tell anyone first off. So that's why she didn't tell her. And I needed to be strong. It was time to be strong. And Marianne chastises herself for reacting the way she did about Willoughby and I don't remember.
Miss Grey.
She chastises herself for not handling it the way that Eleanor did. So you start to see like some repentance. And so when she's like kind of on her deathbed, thankfully making amends, not amends, but she's mending. She's getting better. She's getting better. This is why I don't do podcasts.
No, it's good.
I can't think of words. Anyway, she realizes that Colonel Brandon, is actually like kind of a great guy. He had like gone and gotten her mother. Like he's really stable. He wouldn't ever treat her like Willoughby did. And even you have to remember too, Colonel Brandon knew all about Willoughby and how horrible he was because it was his it was his ward. He took care of the child, the girl who had the affair with Willoughby. That was his ward. And so he knew all about that. He knew how terrible Willoughby was. But he loved Marianne and
Okay. You brought up that part there. What do you make of the fact that there was a duel? Because I say that a lot of people miss it because it's almost like just one little sentence. But Colonel Brandon challenged Willoughby to a duel.
Yeah. And could have killed him, but didn't. Yeah.
Neither
I know.
one.
Why don't we duel anymore? Like, what happened to that? I'm reading, right now I'm reading Count of Monte Cristo. I'm almost done with it. And there's a big duel scene. Yeah. It's like very pivotal. Have you read it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I've never read it before. It's great. I'm really enjoying it. But yeah, there's a big duel scene. And yes, just this morning, I was like, people don't duel anymore.
And I mean, I get that.
Why?
I get.
I mean, always... and it's like it's funny because
well, in this instance, I think it's honestly, I was pleased to see that Colonel Brandon challenged him because he had really taken this girl's honor. He had done nothing to help her, done nothing by her, and how else would he be held accountable? There was really no way for her to do anything, and so I'm glad that it happened, that he did that. Yeah. I thought it was good.
But he did not kill Willoughby.
No, he didn't.
He didn't kill Willoughby. Well, maybe next time.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that's the thing with duels. I don't know. Yeah, whatever. That's a whole different subject. But it's very high stakes, so you have to make sure that it's for a good reason. Like,
right. Well, you were talking.
We used to be a proper society.
Yeah, right.
Anyway. So one other big scene in the as Marianne is getting over her illness, Willoughby actually comes and has a chat with Eleanor. And this, if you ever watch The Sense and Sensibility with Hugh Grant and
Emma Thompson, Kate Winslet.
Yeah, Emma Thompson. Kate Winslet. Who, by the way, again, great casting. They leave this scene out, I'm pretty sure. Don't they leave this scene out?
Yeah. Now that I think about it, you might be right.
I don't think they include it. So just know there's this great scene with Willoughby and Eleanor, where Willoughby basically explains himself. And he says, like, I know that I'm a bad look. I know I'm not. He really did fall in love with Marianne, and he was very scared when he thought she was going to die. Which thankfully she didn't. But, and Eleanor is basically like, I don't want to hear it. And you can go. Like, good riddance.
That's great.
You made your bed. And he even says, like, I hate my wife. I hate my life. Like, what is he? Actually, I wrote down, he says, let me see if I can find it on my little little notes here. I have, by raising myself to affluence, in other words, by marrying the rich woman instead of choosing to marry Marianne, I have, by raising myself to affluence, lost everything that could have made it a blessing.
Yes.
And that is a great line, because I think that sums up kind of his self-realization. Like, I'll never actually be truly happy, because in chasing money and society, I've given up the very thing that would have made those things a blessing, that would have made them
Okay.
good.
I've got to say, though, a little bit farther in the book, toward the end, Eleanor and Marianne are discussing this very thing. And Eleanor, she's trying to, Willoughby begs her to say, please tell Marianne what I've said. And so she feels herself obligated to do that. But she also says that's how he feels right now, because he made his decision to marry for money and seek happiness that way, and he hasn't found it. And so now he thinks that he should have done the other thing. But she says, but he wouldn't have found it there either. He would have married Marianne and thought,
right,
oh, I had to sacrifice wealth and all of these other things. And so he wouldn't have considered himself happy that way either. And she's like, he only is thinking that because he got the one and was not made happy. And I thought that was a really good insight into his character, because he wants to try to make us see him really sympathetically. Like, oh, I have all of this wealth now, but Marianne is worth more to me, and Eleanor's calling him on it. Like,
I'll be miserable forever. Yeah. No.
Yeah.
No, dude. No, and that's a great, like, and the thing that you love about Edward is that he's a very content person. He's content with where he is. He's content with what he has. And this really speaks to, like, the power of contentment, right? If you think about it that way. And it's very true that because Willoughby didn't have good character, like, he's not a good guy. And so he's not going to, like, Marianne is not going to fix him.
Exactly.
Right? Like, she's not going to fix him. You can't fix men like that. Like, they need the Lord, basically.
Yes. That's true.
Don't even try to fix him, though, because, like, that's just how he is. And so he will always be chasing the next thing to kind of make him happy. But
Well, they were in Cleveland, and Marianne was sick on her sick bed. She has lots of time to reflect, and she thinks about her behavior. She thinks about Eleanor's behavior, and one thing that she says, this is probably my favorite line of the whole book. So she's recovering, talking with Eleanor about Willoughby and Edward and these things. And Marianne says that she doesn't wish any greater suffering on Willoughby than what she has endured. And Eleanor responds to her. She says, do you compare your conduct with his?
Right.
And Marianne replies, no, I compare it with what it ought to have been. I compare it with yours.
Right. And honestly, I think that's actually, like, really the point of the book, right there in that line. Like, this is what Austen is trying to get you, the reader, to understand and see and learn from. Definitely. Like, it's not like Willoughby is the worst. Like, and her conduct was not, because it wasn't deceptive like his, and it wasn't, it certainly, there was no actual fornication. They didn't, she didn't cross, she crossed lines of prudence, but she didn't cross, like, she didn't sin bigly, right? In the same ways that he did.
Right.
Big and loud. In the ways that he did. But the point of the book is it's not really all these romances and who's the worst and whatever. It's comparing Eleanor and Marianne, like, seeing kind of, they really do, their stories mirror each other. They're very similar. Right. And so seeing how each of them react. And I think if you were an English teacher and you were teaching this book and you had a final essay at the end, I think the question would be compare and contrast Marianne and Eleanor's behavior.
Oh, yeah.
Like, pretty much. I think that's...
You could also do that with Willoughby and Edward, sort of. Because their situations kind of, they do mirror each other. And I think with Edward, is his behavior was selfless throughout the whole thing.
Yeah.
He was denying himself by not pursuing Eleanor, by not breaking it off with Lucy, because he was placing the happiness of others in front of his. At one point, he even says, I was only doing myself harm by letting myself like Eleanor. That's how he saw it. He didn't think that he was hurting anyone else. And so he thought, well, if it's just me getting hurt, I'll indulge a little bit. I mean, of course, that's not how it worked out. But I think the difference, though, with Willoughby, and this is something that Eleanor says, is that he was selfish in everything that he did. And Eleanor kind of declares this. And Marianne is like, really? You think he's selfish? And Eleanor lets him have it. She says the whole of his behavior from the beginning to the end of the affair has been grounded on selfishness. It was selfishness which first made him sport with your affections, and which afterwards, when his own were engaged, made him delay the confession of it, and which finally carried him from Barton. His own enjoyment, or his own ease, was in every particular his ruling principle. So I think that's the big difference in the character of the two men, was this selfishness, majorly. Whereas the women, though, so with Eleanor and Marianne, it was sensibility, and then with Edward and Willoughby, it was selfishness. So
selfishness, No, that's such a good point. That's a great point. Yeah. They are very different. Their stories are different. But you're right that it's similar, and you're right. Yeah, Edward does deny himself, and that's why you're not even mad at Edward. I mean, you're kind of like, you could have said something, like many a story. You're like, why didn't you just? If you had just communicated, this never would have happened. We
so true.
Skipped.
I know.
I mean,
that's much something that happens so many times in Austen's novels, though, is the amount of times a young man's hands are tied by all of these women that he's held accountable to in some way. Like, oh, well, I can't do this because this rich old lady will disinherit me. Or I can't do this because my mother, or I can't.
My mom will be mad.
Yes. And it's like, I think that was something that Austen was critiquing also. You know, all of these secret engagements and all this going behind things. And it's like all of this entitlement that the older generation had that was inhibiting the younger ones from actually being able to do what they wanted, like at all. And
the social conventions.
And Edward really got the brunt of that in a big way. Like, first he gets disinherited, and then he gets kind of back in his mother's good graces. And then Robert gets disinherited and then back in his mother's good graces. Like, way more than Edward. I love it that Austen says that there was his mother, Mrs. Ferrers, had a principle that basically everything she did was just because Robert was her favorite child.
Right.
And so that was the explanation for why she did what she did. It's like,
right. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. He was the favored child. Yeah, that's so true. Yeah, that's interesting. I've never really thought too much about like some of the generational differences. In like the older generation and like in the story. But they do very much want to have a lot of control over who marries who and when and how, and and that does wreaks a little havoc in the young people's lives. That's for sure.
Right. Think of Lady Catherine de Bourgh. She's an infamous example of having the busybody character, but without any kind of likability, and all she wants is her own way.
Right. Yeah. I think too, when we're talking of like, if you just communicated with each other, persuasion is the biggest example in Austen that I see of this, where it's just like you two. Have you read Persuasion? Yeah. It's two young lovers who are separated through time, and then they meet again later in life, and of course still love each other. But the whole time, you're like, guys, if you just say that you love each other, all of this drama, all of the things. But the whole story, all the conflict is that they don't communicate with one another, basically.
Right. And at the end, it's not solved by them communicating to one another. It's solved by him overhearing a conversation she has with someone else.
Yes.
And that's how it works. He's like, oh, she's a good woman. Okay, we left off with Eleanor and Marianne talking about Willoughby. And
because we haven't gotten to, hi, Eleanor and Edward. Okay.
Right.
We're not done yet. Here we go. All right. My favorite, like probably one of my favorite love scenes of all time.
Okay, so Marianne and Eleanor are back at Barton Cottage, and then they hear from a servant, they hear from their servant that Mr. Ferrers has been married to Miss Steele. So tell us about that.
Okay, so they are like, Edward has married Lucy, for sure. Eleanor, poor thing, like she just goes about her work because she's like, well, we all knew it was going to happen. She just keeps going. Very stoic, very in control of herself. Edward shows up at the cottage, and it's such a funny scene because they're all like, and how is Mrs. Ferrars? And he's like, my mother's great. And they're like, no, this is Edward Ferrars. And he's like, you mean Mrs. Robert Ferrars? And Eleanor loses it. She just loses it. And so much so, she starts crying and is so overcome with emotion. Like, thank the Lord he married her. She's so overcome that she has to leave the room.
Yes.
Love this so much because it's showing that, like, it's her female nature. You can't run from it. And even though it is on you to control yourself, have self-control, and have prudence and temperance and all those things, at the end of the day, you are a girl, and like every girl would have done the same thing. Like burst into tears, cried, just anyway. And so Edward follows her and professes his love for her, and it asks her to marry him, and they get married and they live happily ever after. But just her, like, she's just like almost like the relief.
Mm-hmm.
You can just almost the tension in the book melts away. Like you the reader are like,
yeah.
Because she was so like, you're just like, girl, I just want you to have a good break. You know, like I just want you to be happy, man. And then she gets her happy ending, her moment, and it's just she can't handle it, and you, the reader, almost can't handle it either because it's just such a relief. Yes.
There's another great line when they've heard that Mr. Ferrers has married Lucy Steele, and they're still thinking that it's Edward. There's a part where Eleanor looks out the window and she sees Edward walk into the house. And
I think I know the line.
Beautiful line. It's famous, I'm sure. She says, I will be calm. I will be mistress of myself.
Mistress of myself. That's right.
I love it because she totally flops.
Yes, she does.
She is not mistress of herself.
No, because you can't blame her because you're like,
I know.
Can we take much more? You know, and she's just like, I can't take much more of this. But I will be calm.
I think it's great also, though, because so she runs out of the room, overcome. And then Edward, he does the same thing. Like, he just walks out. He leaves the house. And he just has to, like, go for a walk. And I thought it was great. Like, they do seem suitable for one another in that way. Yeah. Like, neither one of them wants to make a scene or to be overcome like that.
And it's just very British. Like, it's very, you know, that's a very English, like, stiff upper lip. The stiff upper lip, you know.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. We can't show too much emotion. Except Marianne didn't get that memo. But anyway. Yeah, I love it really is one of my favorite scenes. And whatever adaptation you might be watching, it's just always such a great, but I think my favorite one is Emma Thompson's reaction in the Hugh Grant version.
Mm-hmm.
And she just like she's at the fireplace and like she almost faints. Ugly cries. It's so great. And he's just, because he's awkward, he's standing there like, and in that version actually she doesn't run out of the room like in the book, but but he's like you know, like, just he's a dude and he's watching a girl cry and he doesn't quite know what to do about it. It's so funny. Anyway,
it's great. And then they have this time where Edward explains things to Eleanor. He has to explain about Lucy and about his brother and all of the inheritings and disinheritings and back to inheriting and, you know, all of the things. And he shows Eleanor a letter that Lucy had written to him, it was Lucy herself who informed Edward that she was going off with Robert. And so he shows Eleanor this letter, and he's kind of appalled by it. He would have been ashamed to have the author of that letter as a wife. And he tells Eleanor this. He's like, he's repulsed by her writing. And I just thought that was interesting because, again, it's another indication that she is low class. She is uneducated, ill-bred, all of these things. And I was wondering if that still applies today, like in an age where no one uses proper grammar and, you know, where no one knows how to write a good letter. I'm like, do we still have that? Where your diction and your grammar indicates levels of things. Like I don't know.
I'm sure so. Like I would think especially like vocabulary would be a big indicator, because I don't know, because we almost speak in texts and memes and things like that. Like even just speaking. I think you can tell someone is better educated a lot of times just because they'll use words or phrases that you're like, you read that in a book for sure. You know, like you definitely did not get that off the internet, right? I don't know. So I think you're right. We've lost the ability to recognize that. I don't think we can write a letter. And by we, I just mean generally. Like, I don't think most people could write a proper letter, like they would have.
Yeah, I think instead of it being like a high class, low class distinction, I think it's probably more of a scholar versus someone who's not a scholar.
Yeah, or even just.
And I guess that shows.
Like, it just very much an indication, like an indicator where you are from, like your stock,
true.
Like where you're from. A lot into it, but yeah, and that makes sense. Like in their society, they would have had, like, educated people would have written a letter a certain way, right? And you can pick up when clearly you're not from around here, right?
That's good. Okay, so Edward and Eleanor are now, they're set, they're a thing, they're engaged and happy, and they get married, and they move into the parsonage at Delaford, which was offered by Colonel Brandon, intended for Lucy. Eleanor now gets to move in with Edward. And it's really this wonderful, happy situation. And all of their friends and family, everyone's happy. And then it says, and all of their thoughts turned to bringing together Colonel Brandon and Marianne. It says, they each felt his sorrows and their own obligations. And so Marianne, by general consent, was to be the reward of all.
Yep. He gets the girl in the end.
That's great.
Yep.
It's Colonel Brandon.
Yep.
Yeah, everyone sympathized with him. Everyone felt like he deserved something really great. And they were like, Marianne.
Yeah, because he was single for Marianne. All that, but she's described as like a great beauty, and she is described as like joyful. Like we're picking her apart because that's kind of the point. But she has a lot of good qualities too, and that I'm sure are very attractive to a man. Like it clearly was not a problem for Marianne to have guys interested, and for a reason.
No.
Here we go. But yeah, if you think about it, like he was in love with a woman who his father didn't want him to marry, who gave her, or who set his brother up with, basically gave her to his brother as a wife. So he had to watch the woman he loved marry someone else, his brother, you know. And then and I think they got divorced, which is which in that time was really, I mean, that's not like today. I mean, that would have been a very big deal.
Yeah, I actually didn't remember that. And reading it this time around, I was kind of shocked. I was like, Austen.
Yeah, I know.
It's kind of one of the most scandalous affairs in all of her books.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, Jane Austen, like, it is like some pretty mature material, especially like if you read like Mansfield Park is very like has some very adult material, because we think Jane Austen and we think like the English countryside and we think and just very kind of polished love story fit for the whole family. But here we have a story, even this one, Willoughby's had an affair and gotten a girl pregnant and, abandons her. Like, that's pretty heavy stuff. Anyway, so Colonel Brandon had really been through it. This woman died, leaving Colonel Brandon her child after she was abandoned by his brother. And then the girl, of course, has this affair, gets pregnant. She runs away with Willoughby, and he can't find her for a long time. There's a part, we didn't discuss this, but there's a scene in the book earlier where he is supposed to go on an outing with Marianne and Willoughby and Eleanor and the mom and the Middletons. They're all there, and they're supposed to go on an outing, but he gets a letter and has to leave really quickly, abruptly. And it turns out he had been looking for this girl for a long time, and finally, I can't remember if somebody found her or if she reached out to him. I think she might have reached out to him. But anyway, yeah.
She wrote him a letter.
And so he's like, found her, gotta go. Anyway, so Brandon really had been through it. And he was not not a flighty guy. So he didn't fall in love with every new girl in the county, So he really, he was alone for years, 15 years or something. And then Marianne comes along and reminds him of his first love. So he had been very faithful to his first love.
Yeah.
And Marianne comes along.
I really like the differences in Marianne's character before and after her sickness.
Yeah.
And before and after her love with
getting her heart broken.
Which the sickness was tied to.
Yeah.
It was kind of, one big thing. And I love how Austen has her changing and almost becoming more deserving of Colonel Brandon.
Maturing
as a woman.
Because again, she was 17.
What would be a good wife?
Because she was 17. Rachel at 17 was
right.
I get it. Again, I was like, wow, I'm a Marianne. That's a problem. But she's she's a young girl, so, which is why I say this is a great book to go through, I think, with your daughters, when they start coming of age, and this is the time to, this is the kind of character you want to be, and this is what you don't want to do. Yeah.
Right. So at pretty much the very end of the book, Austen writes this about Marianne, and I want to read these two paragraphs, which shows how her character morphed. She says, Marianne Dashwood was born to an extraordinary fate. She was born to discover the falsehood of her own opinions and to counteract by her conduct her most favorite maxims. She was born to overcome an affection formed so late in life as at 17, and with no sentiment superior to strong esteem and lively friendship, voluntarily to give her hand to another, and that other, a man who had suffered no less than herself under the event of a former attachment, whom 2 years before she had considered too old to be married, and who still sought the constitutional safeguard of a flannel waistcoat. But so it was. Instead of falling a sacrifice to an irresistible passion, as once she had fondly flattered herself with expecting, instead of remaining even forever with her mother, and finding her only pleasures in retirement and study, as afterwards in her more calm and sober judgment she had determined on, she found herself, at 19, submitting to new attachments, entering on new duties, placed in a new home, a wife, the mistress of a family, and the patroness of a village.
Don't you love it? Don't you just love it? Yeah.
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 I know.
That's great.
And I feel like that wraps her up with a little bow on top. We got her.
I love how she repents and she does grow. So it's not like comparing Willoughby and Edward in the sense that Willoughby is always going to be Willoughby until seriously, unless he comes to kind of conversion event.
Right.
But Marianne, because she was not, it's not that she's evil, she's not, at the core a bad character. It's that she was really immature and really unwise, very foolish, and imprudent. And that's the point. But I love that she grows and, there's hope. There's hope for us, Grace.
Yes.
Hope for us all.
Hope for you and me. Okay, good. Well, we can call it quits at that.